Welcome back to the Justin Prince Show. I'm excited for you guys to meet one of my guests today because Mel has an incredible ability to take the complexity of your wealth building, like your asset building, wealth building, creating a money machine, and break it into the smallest, simplest, actionable items for you. So, you've seen the studies on when it comes to like divorce, for example, or the pressures that marriages feel. So much of it revolves around money, around kitchen tables. Families won't dare talk about it. If they do, they all get in big arguments about money. And what if it doesn't have to be that way? What if you can actually build an empire for your family and build an incredible life for yourself, and you can like put the shame down and kind of the pressures down, and you can just talk about money and learn how it works and, understand it in a way that really serves you and serves your kids and, your grandkids and your future generations. So super excited for you guys to meet Mel. Now, I want to say this before, as we just kind of dive into this conversation. Mel is he's one of the sweetest men I know. That's the best way I can describe this guy. He's like Mel, we'll have to get into it, what your martial arts background is. This dude could light your world on fire. So you don't misunderstand when I use the word sweet. He's a strong man, but he is very meek. Jordan Peterson said it best. He said, a rabbit that doesn't attack you is not meek. A tiger that doesn't attack you, that's a meek tiger, right? Mel is a meek tiger. He could tear you in half, but he doesn't, But he's just such a good man. I met him years ago when I was went to a Brendan Burchard event. We met there. Just such a down-to-earth guy. Now, he's not just at the event. He's on the stage. He's working with Brendan, putting it all together. Then I went out to New York for a mastermind, and we had lunch. Just me, Brendan, and Mel. I went back to Brendan's room and had lunch, and he's just such a good man. He's just such a good man. Met his wife. She's an absolute sweetheart. So I'm excited for you guys to hear this conversation from a person that I trust and that I respect, and to have conversations about things that really matter. So Mel, man, I'm just so honored to do this with you, and so appreciative that you would jump on here. And I know you have a lot going on right now in your life to be able to serve more people at a higher level, but appreciate you making this time.
Oh, Justin, first, the gift is mine to be able to serve and be here with you and just get a chance to chat. It's been too long.
It has been too long. Dang it. We gotta do this more often. So
yeah.
Let's start with this. You have this passion for money. Let's just kind of dive into that. But what I want to start with is this idea that there's an old adage that says you want to dig the well before you need the water. And you went through some life-changing things just here a number of years ago. We all did during 2020, during kind of the pandemic era, but you did starting in 2019. And one of the blessings that you had is that of all of the tremendous challenge and pressure and pain and uncertainty that you were going through, money wasn't one of them because you had already dug the well, before you needed the water. So share with us what happened in 2019 and how that led up to what's happening this June.
You know what? I'm going to go back a little further because it's what 2019 highlighted something that happened before. I was a single full-time dad, raising my son from age 6. And I was building my business. I was doing the things that I thought I was supposed to do as an entrepreneur. So I was on the treadmill, running and running and running, and I'm a CPA by education, so I was doing a lot of speaking and trying to build that. And one day, Jeremy comes running in from school and he goes, "Daddy, I drew a picture of you at school today." So it's like, you have a child that's excited like their birthday morning, so you stop everything. I kneel down, I grab this picture, I look at it, and here I am in blue felt tip pen, a stick figure, standing in front of 2 computer screens and a phone in each ear. And it was at the hands of a 6-year-old boy that I realized that I was, 1, screwing up the greatest gift that I was given, that was to be a dad. And 2, I got handed one of the biggest money business lessons of my life. And I had to be open to it because what he was doing, it wasn't a picture, it was a mirror. And it was a mirror for me to reflect and look at things. And I had all these people in my head going, "Hey, you got to get work-life balance. That's the problem. You got to get work-life balance." And the fact is that work-life balance is a myth. The idea of having balance is like you have 2 weights pulling and playing tug of war. That's conflict. That's friction. That's not life. And a balanced life is a mediocre life, I believe. I think what we really need is not balance, but harmony. And harmony comes from being intentional, because here's what I knew. I could have looked at Jeremy and said, hey, kid, man, I get this, but you know what? We need this. We need the profits so we can do the things we want to do. We need the profits so I can keep the roof over my head. We need the profits so we can go to Disneyland. But we weren't. And if a 6-year-old boy understood what profits were, he would probably look at me and say, but Dad, I don't need your profits.
I don't want profits. Yeah.
I just want your presence.
Ooh.
And that's the thing that kind of started to look at and say, I have to examine, how do you do business and how do you do money differently, so it allows me to serve the greatest things in my life and to make each moment count. And so that's what gave birth to a lot of the things that I did, was to try and be a good dad, try to do the right things. And what got born out of this is this idea of the money machine. But what I didn't know is it may have been born at the hands of a 6-year-old. But in 2019, I saw the huge value of it. And that was this. In 2019, I was speaking, I was traveling, I was masterminding with some of the top entrepreneurs people would know. I literally flew back on someone's G5. It wasn't mine. So, but it's a private jet. I get off on the tarmac 2 weeks after I step. I mean, life is good. And I step off that plane, and 2 weeks after that, I find myself in a hospital bed with a doctor looking at me saying, hey, man, we see a 5-centimeter tumor on your bladder. I can't see the ureter on the right side. We might have to put a bag and a tube in. It's on top of the prostate. We might have to take the prostate out. And if it's bad, you're going to lose your bladder. I'm like, in a moment, my life got turned upside down. Everything I knew about life got turned upside down. And I knew that. I said, I got to fight. It's the only choice. So we shut everything down. We had to shut everything down to allow me to fight and allow me to do the things. And I knew I was in for the fight of my life. To really start to navigate this. And so it wasn't something that I wanted to work during the day and fight for my life during the night. It was 100%, 24/7. That was the only thing I had to focus on. And I had the luxury of sitting back and saying, I can fight this medically, physically. I've got those battles I got to handle. But what I didn't have to do is fight it financially. And it's because of what was born out of the picture that was drawn by Jeremy, years and decades before, that I was able to sit back and say, we've got this money machine. Let it carry us without us having to worry about our lifestyle, selling things and doing things. And, that was June 2019. Pandemic comes up, and and there were so many people struggling and so many people financially struggling. And I'm just watching and I'm going, God, if they just understood some things, this would never have happened in their lives. No matter whether pandemic or not, whatever it is, it doesn't need to be that way financially. And that's the thing that really started to come out of that whole thing.
So you ended up writing a book called Building Your Money Machine, and the subtitle is How to Get Your Money to Work Harder for You Than You Did. And I think all of us listening, we know how hard it is to go make a dollar, right? We go out there and work hard, we build the skill sets, we get the education, we go through the wins, we go through the losses, we go through the ups, go through the downs. And so this idea of having a money machine that's working harder for you than you did for it, to create the original dollar, is both extremely appealing, and then on the other hand, maybe a little bit, kind of like, wait a second. And because I know that you strategically titled it that, meaning that's not hype, that's not overstatement, that's you're titling it that because that's what you can help people to do. Walk us through your methodology. Walk us through your thinking when you talk about creating a money machine and turning your money into a money machine. Walk us through kind of how you look at this.
Here's the thing. We're raised in a society of earn. Whether it's go get a degree, go get a good job, just go earn money. That's the gist of what they tell us. And we believe that the earning of the money is what gives us financial freedom, what gives us the ability to control. And I look at it more of, how do I have a life of choice, of my own choosing, to decide each moment? I think that we should be measuring our wealth in time and not dollars. So how much of my time can I control? Do I have a choice with? But we think that earning enough is all we need. And what I realized, especially at the hands of Jeremy, was I can earn, but I wasn't living. And the living, the freedom, the choice wasn't from the earnings machine that we were creating. Whether that's a job or a business, it's a machine. It's to create the earnings. But our freedom was in a second machine that no one talked about. And that's what I call the money machine. See, our job, our earnings from our business, what I realized was not there to give us freedom. It was there to create a solution, to have an impact, to make a difference, and to get paid with a cash flow stream. That's it. That's it. The difference then is to sit back and say, well, what do I do with a cash flow stream?
Yeah.
You build the money machine. And why that's important is when you build the money machine, we can talk more specifically about it. You now separate and detach, disconnect your efforts from your ability to earn. And that's where the magic happened. That's where you move from a get-to life to a have-to life to a get-to life. And so when Jeremy drew that picture, I kind of looked at it and said, the only way I had as an accountant at the time to make money was to burn the hours. So I had to get on the treadmill. I had to run. And the only way I could make more money was to run faster, run harder, run longer. That's going to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to breakdown, and it's going to jeopardize my relationships. So I said, how do I use this to create something that isn't attached to my efforts? And that's how this all came about, is that whether you think it's your 401k, whether you think it's your IRA, whether you think it's your business, it's not if you don't do it right. The key is to make something that isn't driven by your efforts that allows you to live. When we shut everything down in 2019 to focus on the cancer, we didn't drain accounts. We didn't sell stuff. We didn't downsize. Our life changed. Trust me, cancer changes everything. Okay. But we flipped the switch on a machine like an ATM and said, let the money come to us now so we can continue our lifestyle. And then once I came out of it, then we said, let's shut the machine down and let it keep growing even more. And I'll bring everything back up online again and start building, which is what we did. It was a choice, but it was it was something that I truly believe is the thing that drives financial freedom. And I believe financial freedom is everyone's birthright. We just got to go claim it and do it right.
So let me ask you this. I want to get into some of the specifics of how you,
Yep.
how the methodologies of how you teach people to do this. But let me start with the mindset, because Mel, here's been my experience as I've worked with people from all over the world. It's like they have one foot on the gas to create their dreams and goals, and they want that to happen, and they're working hard, and they're sincere, and they're good people. And then they also at the same time have one foot on the brake. And the brake is a little bit of a mindset thing where it's kind of like, if I become successful, rich people are rude. If I become successful, rich people are greedy, or money is the root of all evil, or, you know, what does this say about me if I become rich? Or what are my friends going to think about me if I start succeeding, and they'll think that all I care about is money. And the truth is I actually really care about people. And so I've tried to share with them, and I'll share with you kind of my perspective. I'd love to hear yours. I say to them, I go, money itself is neutral.
Yeah.
You know, like money is not like bad or good. It's just neutral. In fact, I wonder if money sometimes is kind of like, why is everyone coming at me? I'm just neutral, you know? And if you are a good person and you have money, you'll probably be a good person that can do more good things for more people. If you're a complete dirtball and you have a lot of money, you'll probably be more of a dirtball. So it's a little bit of a magnifier. It almost magnifies a little bit of who you are. And obviously as humans, we can adapt and change, but just generally speaking, if a total dirtball gets a lot of cash, they're probably more of a dirtball. And if a really sweet, kind, giving, compassionate person gets a lot of cash, they're probably more giving and kind and sweet and compassionate. So What have you seen from a mental perspective? Some of the mental
Yeah.
shifts that people or mental blocks they have, and how have you helped them to shift it mentally to start before you get into the actual practical steps?
So I love that you're asking this question, because when I came to doing some of this work, I originally thought, hey, I'm an accountant. I'm going to teach you the columns and rows, the mathematics, and just focus on the tactics. And it didn't take very long to realize that if we don't deal with the stuff in between our ears and in our heart and soul, then all the tactics, all the columns and rows of mathematics won't work. And so I think that we need to realize one of the biggest problems is most of our money lessons are caught, not taught. That just we're told, we grow up in an environment, for the most part, at least I did, was, oh, don't talk about money, it's impolite.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, but here's the thing. The American Psychological Association just published a study. 72% of Americans, of people surveyed, feel stress around money. 22% said it was extreme stress. So you got either a quarter of the population in extreme stress, or 3/4 stressed. Yet we're told not to talk about it. But you can never solve a problem without ever having a conversation around it. So why are we not talking about it? And it's because we have these misnomers, these myths about, money's for the evil, for the greedy, for the, but I agree with you. It's just a tool. And if we're not careful, I'll go back. One of the first stories in the book is the first time I saw my dad. My dad was an immigrant, came here at 17 years old. This man that was defying persecution, was being hunted to be hung, comes here at 17 years old with nothing and builds something. We didn't have money.
Mel?
He was in Baghdad.
Wow.
Yeah. And so at 17 years old, he was helping people out of the country and bringing weapons in to protect people, to keep people safe. Him and 4 other friends were doing that in their teen years. 2 of them got caught, and they were being tortured. And they were going to hang all 5. So my dad, our family name is not Abraham. He took my great granddad's first name and got fake papers, helped the 2 escape. So all 5 of them got out safely. My dad came here with nothing.
Wow.
And he became an engineer. So it wasn't like we were living ostentatiously or anything like that. But when the first memory of this guy that fought that and did this, of me and money, was I was 5 years old, and I saw him in tears for the first time. And I saw him talking to my mom, saying, we just simply can't afford that now. And she was upset. And then I hear him say, I feel like I'm disappointing the people I love. So here, as a 5-year-old, I take that on to mean that if I don't make enough money, I'm going to disappoint the people I love. But let's fast forward. I was making good money, and Jeremy draws a picture, and even with making good money, I was still disappointing the people I love. And we don't realize where some of these stories and things come in from. And so one of the first things I do is I call it the money story dynamic. Yeah. And what happens is that we observe something, but we don't have the right context for it, so we interpret that something. And that interpretation creates an identity for us. That identity will determine the behaviors, and the behaviors will determine what I call a money set point. And if we're not careful, we allow the interpretations which are not facts. They're simply our perspective on the facts to define who we are, which defines the behaviors, which defines how far we can go. And so one of the first things we need to do is sit back and say, how do I separate the interpretation from the facts? And the way to do it, one of the easiest ways to determine what's facts and what's interpretation is this. You go back and you watch what was happening through the lens of a camera with no sound. So you're watching a silent movie and you're watching what happens. Everything you see is fact. Everything else is interpretation. And when you start to look at that, you will then separate the facts from the interpretation, because when you understand the facts, you can now sit back and say, what does it really mean? And I'll give you another for instance. In 2005, I made an investment. Look, I've done well financially. I have lost more money than some people make in a lifetime, but I joke around and say I've been fortunate enough to do enough things right to be successful, but I've been even more fortunate to do enough things wrong to be educational. And so in 2005, I got into an investment that turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. Now, I'm a financial guy. I recommend the investments, and I mean I don't sell investments, but I recommend and I help people. I got taken for 1/3 of everything I owned. Me and two friends lost $4.5 million. 1/3 of everything I owned, and I was interpreting the craziness out of it. I was sitting back telling myself, I'm a loser. Yeah. I should give up my CPA license. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be advising. I need to stop all this. And I was beating myself up. And you'll see a theme. Jeremy saves me again. And I looked at it and I said, but Jeremy's watching. So all of what I just said was interpretations. What was the facts? The camera would have seen me giving this guy money. The camera would have seen me giving this guy more money. The camera would have seen me not getting any money back. That's it. That's it. That's what happened. Everything else is interpretation, which can be productive or not productive. And in my case, it was not productive until I said this. I said, what is my role in it? Because as soon as I was willing to accept my role, I was fully empowered to grow from it. But until I was willing to accept my role, I was putting it outside of myself and I couldn't grow from it. All of my investing rules, all of the things that I teach, all of the things that I've written on, all of the things that I have done since that time was born out of being willing to accept and say, now, if I've accepted it, what did I learn? And how do I make sure it doesn't happen to me or anyone else again? And now I can grow from it. And so we need to start to pick apart the interpretations and the facts that are going on inside of us to start to grow from it and make it happen.
So the interpretations is another way I could explain that is the story that we attach to it.
It's a story. It's the meaning. It's the
story.
Yeah. And typically it's much more emotionally charged than the facts. And that's why if you're looking through a camera lens, there's no emotion to a camera lens.
Got it.
And when we make emotional money or financial decisions, typically they're bad.
Yes.
How did I get in the Ponzi scheme? Because he stirred up the aspirational emotions.
Yes. Or ego.
All of it.
Fear of loss.
Dude, I was creating a spreadsheet on these returns looking at it and going, I am going to have more than GDP. It was ridiculous. And had I stepped back from it and just logically looked at it and said, something doesn't add up here.
Yep.
But I ignored the voice. I ignored the rules. I went ahead with it. I had a friend that was in it for a year and a half, and he was making money, and I thought, okay, let's do it. And then I kept going into it.
Let's talk about some of those rules. What are some of the logical checkpoints? So let's say that we work through some of our emotional stuff, some of our mental stuff. Money's not going to make me a better person or a worse person. It's, I tell people it's not virtuous to be rich and it's not virtuous to be poor. It's virtuous to be virtuous. Money's not, it's going to amplify, the virtues I want to pursue, right?
Yeah.
Let's say we get there. Walk us through some of the rules. These would be some of the less emotional, more practical rules that would help both create our money machine, but then also keep us out of trouble from losing dollars. So walk us through your mindset from the rules perspective.
The first thing always is that we never invest in anything we don't understand. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. Mm-hmm. So if I don't understand it, I'm either going to invest the time first to understand it, and or they will invest the time to get me to understand it, or I don't. And like, if I'm doing anything, like we can talk about index funds and ETFs and all that stuff, but if I do any other investing, say it's investing in a startup or in a small company or some syndication, not only do I need to understand it, I will make sure that I'm going to have a conversation with the top people at the investment. And if they don't want to take the time, then they don't earn my money. And if I leave $1 billion on the table, I'm okay with it. My job, I believe, is to be safe first, to preserve my family's legacy, and then grow second.
So, Mel, what do you say when the person says, I appreciate that advice, but you got to understand, I'm working my job. I got kids running all over the place. I got a side business. I'm not an ETF expert, or I'm not a stock market expert, or I'm not a real estate expert. What do you say to that person when you're saying to them, only invest in things you understand? How do they get to a point where they actually understand it? What advice would you give them?
So we don't do this in isolation. And so and this is one of the things is if we're going to have advisors, and I have a wealth team, I have advisors, but they also know that their first job is education. Their first job is education. Now, which leads to this, one of the second rules is what's the person's bias? Okay? Because there's always, if we can find the bias, we'll find the hole in the possible investment. And as long as we make it clear, if they're making a commission, if they're making a fee, all that stuff, put it on the table, let me know. I now know the bias and I can make the decision. But I want to surround myself
with. Mel, don't you think it's fair to ask the person to say, walk me through how you're compensated? I think that's a fair question.
It's an absolutely fair question. We shouldn't feel apprehensive at all about it.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
In fact, because what happened, I had a prior advisor that put me into an investment that, unbeknownst to me, I didn't ask the questions, to be fair. Unbeknownst to me, it was an investment through his brother, whose brother got a huge commission and he got a huge commission. It was not a good investment for me. It wasn't something that was in my best interest, but it certainly was in theirs. Now, had they put that on the table and I made the same decision on me, but because they weren't transparent, then they knew somehow that this wasn't right. Otherwise, they would have transparently said, hey, here's how we're getting paid on this, just so you know. Okay. They didn't tell me. So it's a legit question to do that. So in order to game up, if you will, I want you to start to make sure that whoever you're talking to, whether it's a mentor or an advisor, that they're willing to educate you. And if they don't want to take the time to make sure you understand it, it's not about getting you to become an expert, but it is about getting you from the passenger seat to the driver's seat to be able to make the decisions in your financial life. So my team, whoever it is, whether it's my attorneys or advisors, they're on the right and left of me. My hands are on the wheel. And they inform me so I can make an informed decision. Then I can ask the question, say, I don't understand. And what, tell me, okay, here's the things. Okay, great. I can make that decision. So I don't expect anyone to be an expert because, look, I'm a numbers nerd. I'll watch things. I'll read things. I don't expect you to do that. But it's your financial legacy and your financial future we're talking about, and no one's going to love it more than you. And so
I love this idea. That was such a small shift that I've never heard someone explain it that way. I love this idea that you go from, in essence, the passenger, and you're saying to them, hey, you're the expert. You go do the thing. To say, no, I'm the driver, and they're advising you. So you're up to speed enough. You can explain what's going on enough. You've asked enough questions. And remember, my friends, as you're hearing this is what these folks get paid to do. It's all good for them to make $1. I want them to make $1.
Yeah.
Right? I want there to be a fee where they're winning. That's cool. But they're part of their value they're adding is you're up to speed. You're the driver, right? They're advising you so that you can make your own decisions. So if you win, you know why and how, and so you can win more. If you lose, you say, okay, got it. I want to avoid that again. So so you're not just oblivious. I love that small distinction, Mel. That's so smart.
It's huge. And what's huge is if we get down to also one of the reasons I like the money machine is that I get to use it while I'm here. God forbid I leave this earthly place. The machine moves to my wife. then to my son and his wife, then to our grandchildren. But the important thing is you always make sure that you transfer skill sets before assets. And in these conversations of explanation and education, like with my son, I started talking with him about money at 10, 11 years old. I started paying him and everything. And about 13, he started going to my investment advisor meetings, one a year, one a quarter. It just depends. But it wasn't for him to know what we had as much as to get him to start to understand the thought process behind it so he could get curious. Well, he just turned 34. His wife's 30. They've got 2 children, 3 homes, and a multi-million-dollar net worth. I think there's never too early to start to have these conversations. But in order to do that, we need the right people in our world. We need to understand it enough to be able to talk with them and have real conversations that build value on a foundation of values that will continue on while you're gone.
I'm going to shift gears on you, and then I want to come back to the train track that we're on, because I want to talk to the person that's hearing this that feels intimidated by money. So you know who you are, right? You're hearing this, you're like, this all sounds good, but I don't know if I want to get into money, and here's why. There's a little bit of ego that we feel of like, I don't want to admit that I don't know any of this stuff. I don't want to admit that I'm like a little lost, and here I am, the dad of that, the man of the house, or here I am, the woman of the house, and I actually don't know this. So therefore, I'm not going to talk to my kids about it because I don't want to look like I don't know anything, or I'm not going to talk to my friends or advisors about it. So there's a Japanese word called shoshin. It basically means a white belt mentality, meaning you're just anxious to learn, you're willing to learn. There's a humility about this. And Mel, what is your martial arts background? What discipline were you raised up in?
So the very first, my first black belt's in Shotokan karate.
When anyone starts with my first black belt, you're in trouble. So first was in Shotokan, and then what from there?
And then I studied I met a guy that was in a Japanese style of jiu-jitsu. It would be akin to the root art that gave rise to Aikido. And I had good punches and kicks from Shotokan, and I'm at a seminar, and he says, "Oh, punch!" And I had no idea. Like, he stepped aside, got a hold of me, had me in a finger lock, and I was screaming like crazy, going, "What is that?" He says, "Jiu-jitsu." I said, "I got to learn that." So I have a third degree in a Japanese style of jiu-jitsu. I lived and trained in Japan under a 17th generation samurai bloodline. And so you talk about Shoshin. At a black belt in one style, I'm going to this. Guess what? White belt goes right back on.
Yeah. You were as the baddest man around in the one dojo or gym, and then all of a sudden you're a white belt. I guess the reason I bring that direction up, I told you I was going to kind of derail it for a second. The reason I bring that up is I wonder if, and I'm asking this in the form of a question, I wonder if for you, you have that humility about you. It's one of the things about you that I instantly noticed when we met. When we were in New York together, I knew this about you. You just this deep humility. I think sometimes when you realize that there's someone tougher than you, you're like, okay, I'll just be humble where I'm at, But how has that affected your wealth creation? And more importantly than just you specifically, how can that person listening that's feeling a little apprehensive right now and a little like, crap, I don't know this stuff, and I'm like probably old enough that I should know, and I'm feeling a little like, how would you apply that Shoshin mentality to them?
So because I think that you're right on in the sense that there's a lot of ways that this will show up. It'll show up like, well, when I make more money, then I'll start doing some of this. Or it'll show up as, it's too complicated, I can never make it happen. Okay? Here's what we know. Okay? I look at wealth creation as just like going to the gym. You have the wealth creation is a curve, and what I call that there's a wealth flat line. And there's a period of time where you're trying to build your money, and you put a lot away, but it doesn't seem to build much. And it's what I call the wealth flat line. Here's why I think that happens. There's mathematics behind it, but I think psychologically why that happens is because you're not prepared for the growth. And during that flatline period, you're learning, you're investing, you're doing things, but you're compressing a spring that will rocket in the future years. It's the acceleration zone. The flat line, the only way you get past the flat line is time. And why this is important, and this will go to answer your question, is this. When we go to the gym for the very first time, the last thing we're going to do is go walk into the gym. We've never been in there. We see a bench press. We slap on a bunch of 45-pound plates. We lay down on the bench, and we think that we're gonna do ourselves a favor and start to bench press, 200, 250 pounds. We're going to hurt ourselves. Mm-hmm. We need to go to the small chrome weights, nothing wrong with chrome weights, and just start to work the muscle. And the reason we feel uncomfortable is because we just haven't worked the muscle. And wealth creation is just a muscle that we have to work. It's no different than learning to tie our shoes. We did okay there. Learning to walk, we did okay there too. And so this is a language and a muscle that you haven't exercised. Is there soreness in it? Yes. But the most important thing, and this is why I say, even if it's only $5, I want you to put $5 away. Not because it's $5, but because it's getting the chrome weight and picking it up and working the muscle.
Working the muscle. Got it.
And it's forcing you to sit back and say, because here's what I know. Any mistake you make with $5 is not going to be terminal. So why wait till you have 5,000 or 50,000 and making a mistake? Let's make the mistakes at $5, $10, learn from them, grow from them, not judge ourselves and critique ourselves, but learn and grow from them so we can grow. That Ponzi scheme wiped out 1/3 of everything I owned. In 18 months, not only, it was well into the 7 figures, not only did I recover it, we tripled it. So the point being is that I understand that this is new. It's awkward. The first time I stepped on a dojo floor and they said, kick, it was awkward. Okay? The first time we do anything, it's awkward. That's why you surround yourself with people that you can have conversations with. You start small, not because it's going to make a home run, but it's because it's going to train you into a muscle and a habit that makes sense. Because the other thing that I know about wealth creation is that it is a lot more to do with your behaviors, habits, and decisions than ever to do with your money. And so we need to develop that skill set more so than the money.
I want to get into some really practical takeaways. This was the last time they heard you speak, some real practical, here's some next to-dos. But before we get into that, my friends, I want to make sure you go to yourmoneymachinebook.com. So yourmoneymachinebook.com. And I want you to, I'm hoping that as you are hearing this discussion, you're thinking to yourself, okay, work through some of the mental stuff, work through some of the ego stuff that maybe I don't know enough. And you're like, I'm ready. I'm ready to build a money machine. I'm ready to have the money that I'm working so hard to earn work harder for me than I work to get it, right? You start saying, I'm ready for this. My friends, never leave the side of inspiration without taking action. Your job is to take action. Let's go, move forward. And I'm going to encourage you to go to yourmoneymachinebook.com. Be part of the pre-release here so that you're making sure that you have access to it. But Mel, if we were to, this is the last time we ever hear you in our life, and this is the last financial advice. What are these first few practical steps that you're saying to us? Okay, guys, look, we've worked through the head stuff. We've worked through, some of the mindset stuff. Here's some steps that you should be taking to start moving yourself forward.
The first step, which sounds odd, but I want you to define your finish line. I want you to know. So when we first start out, and in fact, the book starts out this way, is what, so here's how it looks. What's your vision for your life? And too often we got caught, especially in today's world, when you're comparing yourself on social media and TikTok and all that stuff, we get caught up with seeing a lifestyle. But the question isn't what they're doing. The question is, what do you want to do? Is it a tent in Montana? Is it a yacht in Monaco? Whatever it is, what is that vision for life? And allow that vision for life to define the plan, which will define the strategy, which will set the tactics, and will give you the action steps.
That's so good.
Because if we don't do it that way, what happens is I'll get a call. Like I just had a call with someone say, hey, where would I invest 10,000? I said, I don't know. Depends what the vision is, the plan is, the strategies, because now you're asking me a tactical question, but I can give you the right answer for the tactic, but it'd be the wrong answer for your plan. So why this is important is, especially in a society built on comparisons, is that we will always win the race that we run in our own lane. We got to run our own race. And too often we allow outside forces to get us off track to say, oh, like I got a $900 coffee maker in there because I was swiping on Instagram one day. That's cool. I can order a coffee for an app. And I went and ordered it. Like that wasn't in the plan. Now, we can afford it, okay? But the point being is that we get taken off our plan and when we're not careful. So the first thing is to sit back and say, what does my life look like if I live it?
Yep.
Now we can sit back and say, great, I now what life, the target where I'm going, I can put a price tag on it. And now we can sit back and say, what do we need to do? And so with that in mind, now you look at it and say, okay, in small steps, we do something that we call the wealth priority ladder. I want to make sure that we're taking and using our money in a certain way. Here's what I see people doing. If you have a business and you want to hire 10 people, the last thing you do is you're going to hire 10 people, bring them to a conference room. You bring them to a conference room and you say, listen, welcome aboard. Glad you're here. By the way, if you noticed, I didn't give you a job description. I didn't give you a title. I didn't give you a role. I didn't give you goals. I didn't give you tasks. I didn't give you any of that. But welcome aboard, and I want to double my business in the next 12 months. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
But that's what we do with our money. We tend to not know what we're doing with our money. We don't give it. Every dollar that comes into our life must have a job description.
I love that.
Every dollar. And the most important part is, just like if you were truly going to hire someone, you have the job description before you even interview them. The dollar's job description needs to be defined before you earn the dollar. So there's no question.
So it'd be the job description of these dollars is pay mortgage. The job description of these dollars is keep my lights on.
Yeah.
This job description is to invest in short term, this and long term, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I go out to dinner, go the vacation, all that stuff. And here's what this does: is everything has been pre-planned.
It's not random. It's not random. It's intentional.
It's intentional, and in the end, if you spend $150 on a dinner, there's no guilt or shame because it's already you allocated it.
Yeah.
So we always want to make sure that we are telling each dollar what it's going to do for us, because it's they're the best employees of the world. They work 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. No PTO, no sick time, and no unions. You don't have to worry about it. And that's the point of getting the money to work harder for you than you did for it. We give them job descriptions, we let them run. So at the very beginning, the first thing I want to do is make sure that people just don't end up in a ditch. And the way to do that is I want $1,500 set aside, or 1 month's expenses. Just put it in a high yield savings account. Something that if a transmission blows, or you have a deductible for a medical, unplanned medical, we've got a new 9-week-old puppy that, needs things or whatever, that you're not putting things on credit. We're in an environment where credit card rates are 24 to 29, 30%. That'll bury your financial future.
That's right.
So you look at it from that perspective, and you might say, well, how do I get $1,500? I promise you, if you looked hard enough, if I went back here, don't tell my wife, right through those doors, those closets there's so much technology there that I'm not using that I could go on Facebook Marketplace. If I needed $1,500, I could put it up there. But what it does is it gets me above tier one. And we just say, okay, I have what I call a comfort fund, not an emergency fund, a comfort fund to take care of me first. The next stage is now to sit back and say, how do I get myself at a place where I have liquidity to operate? And what that means is that I got to get rid of my destructive debt. Yeah, I don't believe all debt is the devil.
I love how you named it. I think that's really good.
Okay. And we'll talk about the difference there. And I need to create what I call a peace of mind fund. Some people call it an emergency fund. So I do those at the same time. Some people will say you do one than the other, but I believe that your debt management muscle and your wealth creation muscle are actually two different muscle groups, and you need to exercise them effectively. And I want you in the game. You cannot win the wealth game if you're not on the field. You have to be on the field. So I want you in the game early, even if, like I said, it's for $5. So destructive debt is the money that we are putting on credit cards or that we are financing lifestyle or consumables. It's stuff that is momentary enjoyments that don't have lasting impacts. And so if we are financing those kinds of lifestyle purchases, that means that we are stealing from tomorrow to have it today that we can't afford. And another way that I say it is that you are forsaking what you want most for what you want now. And so I want to eliminate all destructive debt. Productive debt, on the other hand, is that debt that will allow you to increase your wealth or cash flow over time.
So
it could
good.
be
I love how you named it. I loved how you assigned it and named it, because I think a lot of times we hear sweeping statements, debt's bad, which, by the way, to your point, destructive debt is. So there's truth in the statement. But there is productive debt, to your point, and I love how you bifurcated and named it.
Yeah, I think that there's two common characteristics, no matter whether it's productive or destructive, that we need to be aware of, is that all debt costs and all debt stresses. And as long as we understand that, we go, okay, even productive debt costs me interest, and it will stress me financially, and it'll stress me out psychologically. And so we just need to be aware of it. And at some point, I want you completely debt-free. But on the journey, we don't want to be, we know that we might have to go into productive debt to make it happen.
Yeah.
You know, you might finance a piece of real estate or a piece of equipment or something like that.
Got it.
So I think that that's the next step, is really making sure that we are eliminating destructive debt while building a peace of mind fund. Now, people will say 2 to 3 months. I actually think that's way too, or 3 to 6 months. I think it's short. I think we need to think in terms of 9 to 18 months. Call it 12 on average, especially for entrepreneurs, because the ebbs and flow of business, you never know. You have a situation like happened with me. Okay. I didn't have to worry about it because the money machine was built and cash flowing. But if I was in the middle of building it, I need that.
You need the liquidity for sure.
Yeah. And so I think that you want to extend it out. And people will say, well, how much? I said, it depends. Here's what happens. If I have 2 income earners in a household, then maybe I can go towards the shorter end, 9 months. If I'm the only income earner in the household, then maybe I have to push it further to give me more liquidity. If I'm up in years where I might be coming off of my working years and deciding to slow down, I might have more liquidity than I would if I was at 20 or 30 years old. You know, so your circumstances will help you navigate that. It is guidelines, but not dogmatic.
Yeah.
Hey, here's what it is. And knowing that I will always err on the side of conservative, especially now when you can get 5.5%. What the heck, you know? But I'll err on the side of conservative. Now, once I know that you're going to be eliminating debt and you're going to be building the peace of mind fund. One of those things is going to be done before the other. And whenever you finish one, now we go into investing. Because now I have the liquidity. I've got myself in a place where I can start investing. And now I typically want people to push themselves, again, depending on age and stage, 20 to 25% of their income going into investing.
I love that. My friends, here's what I want you to know as you hear this. You can do this stuff. You can do this stuff. Like, I have no formal education, no financial education. I learned this stuff, right? You can learn this stuff. You know, Tony Robbins has his event. He says, I love numbers and numbers love me. And he has audience repeat back. I love numbers and numbers love me. The point I'm trying to say is you can learn this stuff. And it's, Mel, to your point, there's really incredible men like you that say, let me strip away all of the kind of the complexity and all of the kind of kind of the crap of it, where it's like you have to do real estate or have to do crypto or you have to do whatever. You're just like, yo, let me teach you the principles. If you learn the principles, they're simplistic. You truly can build a money machine that continues to pay and work harder for you, never take nights off, never sleep, and work harder for you than you did for the money that you put into it to start. And my friends, you can do this stuff. So go to yourmoneymachinebook.com and make sure you get connected with Mel. Mel Abraham's one of my favorite guys in the entire kind of personal development world. He's a really, really, really good man. So Mel, I love you, brother. I respect you a ton. I'm so grateful you came on. I love your Shoshin mentality. I love your white belt mentality. I love how humble and kind you are. With as much success as you've had and as many, interesting, cool circles as you run in, you wouldn't know it at all. When you're around you treat everyone with this, whether it's the Uber driver, the man or woman working the front desk, to the CEO, to the biggest influencers in the world. You treat everybody with the same level of respect and courtesy and dignity, and it's a really great trait that you have, and I just respect you a ton.
Thank you, man. Coming from you, that means a ton. So I appreciate it. I don't know. I believe in humanity, and I truly believe that we can live a financially fulfilled life. We don't have to live it stressed, and that this new season of my life, that's my focus. It's a crusade for me right now.
I love it. I'm proud of you, brother. I'm glad that God spared you for this next run of your life through the 2019 crisis you went through, and I'm excited to be a small part of making sure people know who you are and what you're doing. So, my friends, go to yourmoneymachinebook.com, get connected with Mel. And Mel, thanks again, man. I love you and respect you.
Thank you, man. Love you too, man.